Ladies and gentlemen, we welcome you live to episode number 14 of the Primetime Rundown Zoom interview series right here on the Eastern Observer and the Blackjack Media Networks. I'm Joey Jarzynka. We cannot be thankful enough to San Jose Sharks color analyst for NBC Sports California and 98.5 KFOX out in the Bay Area, Bret Hedican. For those that do not know, Bret Hedican was a part of the 2006 Carolina Hurricanes Stanley Cup team. Bret, I cannot thank you enough for joining us here on the Eastern Observer here on this late Thursday evening. Well, where you are, it's still 7 o'clock, but really cannot thank you enough for joining me here tonight.
No, thanks for having me on. It's great to meet you. I know through this whole shelter in place, we're all trying to communicate in different ways, and obviously LinkedIn, reaching out via LinkedIn there, Joseph, I appreciate that. And, you just don't know. I mean, you just don't know who you're going to meet throughout, intercepting people on social media. And here you are and talking to me live. And it's really great to meet you.
Thanks so much again for doing this. And, I think this is like the third or fourth time, so I'm going to stop saying that now, but really good to meet you as well. So let's figure this out. So basically the whole point of the interview series is to get to know who my guests are. And the reason why also I've asked you as well, additionally with LinkedIn, is because the Eastern Observer, you were also on the East Coast at one point. So with Carolina, with Florida and everything along those lines. We'll get to that in a minute. You're also from Minnesota as well, North St. Paul, I believe, if I'm not mistaken.
That's correct.
So Now you went to St. Cloud State University. You were a part of the inaugural campaign, if that's right. 1988 for the Division I hockey program till 1991, till you were drafted with the St. Louis Blues in 92. And on top of it, your number 24 is retired. It's in the rafters. How good does that feel, Bret, to be where, your alma mater has honored you? You were a part of a, amazing team. You set the I believe the defenseman record, for most points in a single season with 48 during the 90-91 season. And, it's like I said, it must be surreal to have. Or what's the feeling like, really?
It's obviously humbling. First of all, I think that's the biggest word I can kind of come up with, because, when I think of my career and where it started, I actually did get drafted in 1988 out of high school, not in 1992. That's the only incorrection that you had said. But my point is when, out of my senior year, I had one school looking at me, and that was St. Cloud State. And they knocked on my door. They said, "Hey, we know you've played defense your whole life, but we recruited you as a forward because we recruited these 3 Canadian defensemen. We don't need another one. Essentially, we've already got enough. But we'd love to have you come up as a forward." So anyway, I took the partial scholarship. I think they offered 8 full rides that year. When you talked about inaugural season, they brought in 8. Recruits, and then me and another guy were the only 2 guys that I think we had to split the full ride. So we're the ones that split a scholarship. That being said, I took it, and I took the opportunity, even though I played a position forward up there my freshman year, which I'd never played in my life. I was in and out of the lineup, and let me just hit the reverse button from there. The very first day of walking in the locker room, all of the other players pretty much got their number, whatever they asked for. I think there was 2 numbers remaining in the locker room with me and the other guy that was the partial scholarship. And there was number 24 and number 25. And when I walked in the locker room with this teammate of mine, his name is Doc, I said, "Well, Doc, what number would you like?" And he said, "I'll take number 25. So by default, I ended up with number 24.
Wow.
And that was my number for the remaining years. And now, as you mentioned, in the rafters. But my freshman year, in and out of the lineup, and I knew I could come back and help the team as a defenseman. I walked in my coach's office after the season, said, "Listen, coach, I know I can come back as a D-man and help this program." And really that's when things started to kind of come together for me. And obviously the junior season, as you mentioned, was a good year as far as numbers wise. But ultimately, I think what the number stands for in the rafters is, it's not so much about the number. It's about the opportunity. It's about making the most of an opportunity. And then obviously, when you make the most of an opportunity, you just don't know how far that can take you. And you mentioned the 2006 Stanley Cup team. And and what that meant to us and that team that I had a chance and opportunity to play with and win. But, it all stems from an opportunity I got at St. Cloud, and that jersey really represents that to anybody that sees it in the rafters. It's not so much about me. It's more about the opportunity that it should stand for, that we all have by going to university or whatever we're doing in life, is that there's opportunities there, make the most of them, and then you just don't know what will happen.
Yeah, no, you said you said that perfectly. And I do apologize again. I reread that. I read that wrong. 1988 exactly. In 1992, if I'm not mistaken, you made your NHL debut in 92. And 92 also you were a part of the USA Olympic team as well. And you went from St. Louis to Vancouver. Now, the question that I want to ask you, Bret, is that there are guys who, they've played on one team their whole career. The feeling of getting traded, what is that like? Like I said, we'll skip over the St. Louis part for just a few moments. But what I want to know is the feeling of getting traded, not once, but a few times. Do you consider that as, like you feel wanted, or, you're out of place type thing? What do you feel with that?
I think it's different for every player because there's situations in every guy's career and girl's career. I mean, obviously, women in basketball, I'm sure, get traded and whatnot. But looking at professional hockey, and when you're playing for a team, and when you don't want to be traded, like in the case of Vancouver, where we had played in a Stanley Cup against the Rangers in '94, and we dismantled the team over the next several years. But they kept, I think, Pavel Bure, myself, and a few others, and a lot of guys had just kind of been traded or left through free agency or retired or whatnot. So the team had gone through a transition. Obviously, Trevor Linden as well, another one of those players that was still around. But I guess my point would be is now that the team was starting to come back, and we started to get great players like Marcus Naslund and Brian McCabe and Bertuzzi and a lot of good players, I started to feel like this team would have maybe another chance to win someday. And when they traded me, when Brian Burke and Mike Keenan traded me, it was kind of a punch to the nose. I will say it was the one time that when I did get traded, the other times not so much, but this one really stung because it was the first time in my career I kind of felt like they gave up on me, and I almost felt like they thought that maybe I wasn't part of the solution. Yeah. And I think any player that gets traded in that scenario, or at least feels that inside, I think that's something that can go one of two ways.
Yeah.
You can either let that get to you and it can make you crumble, or you can really kind of look at yourself and say, okay, maybe they're right. Maybe they had a point to give up on me, but what am I going to do about it? And I think that was a pivotal point in my career where I really took a hard look at myself and realized that I had some deficiencies and I had some things I needed to work on. I was disappointed and I was pissed, no doubt about that. And I remember that moment like it was yesterday when Mike Keenan pulled me out in the office in Dallas. We were there to play the Dallas Stars, and we were at a practice, at the main Reunion Arena, I believe it was called. And I got pulled out in the hallway, and Mike had, basically told me that I was traded. And I just remember saying, you know what, maybe our paths will cross again someday.
Yeah.
And I looked at him and I shook his hand and off I went, but I was mad. I was pissed off. But again, I took a hard look at myself and improved in a lot of ways, mentally and physically. And it all ended up working out in the long run.
Right. So you brought up the mental impact of this, where you were angry, you were frustrated, and you had the deficiency, you said. But now the question that I have is, and I'm going to switch sports for a quick second, because if you follow the NFL, Brandon Cooks, who was traded from LA, from the Rams to Houston, he came out publicly and said, well, he feels like being traded 3 times, he considers being wanted. And the reason why I brought that up to you now is because, with you being traded that many times, do you feel that way? Was it different then as it, is it now, obviously, where there's, there was no social media then, there was, it was just very different then. Did you feel, like I said, wanted when you went to Florida, and then when you went from there to Carolina?
Yeah. I think I really felt wanted when I went from Florida to Carolina. I felt wanted when I went from St. Louis to Vancouver. Um, when I went from, when the situation from Florida to Carolina, I was going to become an unrestricted free agent. And so they had to trade me at that point.
Right.
And I wasn't going to resign in Florida. So that was a situation where, a team like Carolina saw something in me. And I've got a great story about Paul Maurice, who was the head coach in Carolina there my very first day. But I really felt wanted going to Carolina. And then really played there the rest of my career and retired essentially. And then kind of came out of retirement, won for a final year. San Jose Sharks had called me, who I work for now, as you mentioned at the top, doing some broadcasting. But, Doug Wilson called me here at the house and said, "Hey, would you want to play another year?" And I said, "Yeah." And it just didn't work out at the end of the summer where he had made a trade and he had got a couple defensemen in on the deal. And they just didn't have enough money on the cap in order to sign me. So I ended up signing in Anaheim for the year. But the trade from St. Louis, my very first trade from St. Louis to Vancouver, I felt wanted, even though I probably was a shoe-in or a throw-in deal. Me and Nathan Lafayette were thrown in on the trade with Jeff Brown for Craig Janney, who had been awarded for compensation and whatnot from the Peter Nedved, restricted free agent signing. And so the compensation anyway, they sent Janney. Janney said, "Hey, I don't want to go to Vancouver." And then Vancouver said, "All right, we'll send you back to St. Louis, but send us Jeff Brown, Nathan Lafayette, and myself." And in some ways I felt like a throw-in, but some ways I really felt like they wanted me. They saw something in me in Vancouver and that they were going to give me an opportunity. So I'd say, two times I felt wanted, and the one time I felt like I was given up on. So, but when you really weigh it all out, I think, Joseph, when you want to think about, does something affect you in a negative way or something affect you in a positive way? I think both those things, shouldn't affect you either way. And what I mean by this is, you're going to have a lot of highs and lows throughout your career. And I think when you almost look at positive and negatives, those two things should cancel each other out. And then what's left is just you in the middle, and what you stand for and what you represent and how you conduct yourself on a daily basis, I feel is the things that I learned as I got older and I got better through maybe that time of being traded and being given up on. So, utilizing the positive and negatives, but not letting them crush you. Always, like I say, self-assessing, giving yourself some really good feedback, and then taking that feedback and moving forward.
Yeah, that's some pretty good that's some pretty good words of advice there. That's for sure. Because really, that could also be with any industry, any person, anything, anywhere. Now, going to your time with Carolina, the third time was the charm for being in the Stanley Cup. You were there in 2002. You fell to Detroit. We don't want to bring that up, but you won in 2006 against Edmonton. You played alongside fellow St. Cloud alum Matt Cullen, Rod Brindamore, Mr. Game 7, Justin Williams, Andrew Ladd, Mark Recchi. The list goes on. What was that feeling like when you're playing with these amazing players? A couple, Rod Brindamore, current head coach for the Hurricanes, and just you're hoisting the Stanley Cup. What's the feeling like?
Well, you froze up there for a little bit. I just, and now you're back. But I will say, I think what the question is on what's it feel like to raise the cup? Is that what the question was, Joseph?
Yes. Yep.
Yeah, I think I talk about this moment, with kids sometimes, or, I just had St. Cloud State University. I had a conversation with all the current players on a Zoom call like this. Bret Larson, their head coach, asked me to kind of do a motivational speech to them and whatnot. But it was great to meet all those former or the current players. But the one thing I talk about is, when I raised that cup, I can still remember that moment like it was yesterday. And I think the one thing that I said to myself when I raised it over my head, it's, gosh dang it, I was right to not give up. And I was right to not, to continue to try to get better every day, to continue to believe in myself. And there's a lot of tough moments in professional sports. And I know a lot of people, maybe listening to this, they watch their favorite athletes and they get the big dollars or whatever the case may be. And they think, boy, that guy's pretty lucky. Yeah, we're absolutely fortunate, and no more fortunate now than recognizing how fortunate we are now with what we're going through right now, with this pandemic, and everybody's sheltering in place and there's no sports. I mean, this is a terrific opportunity to realize how special we really are. But there's a lot of ups and downs through professional sports that test you physically, mentally. And sometimes you wonder if you're going to be able to continue on. And again, this isn't life or death in the military and things like that. Those things are much more stressful than what we go through. But putting it in perspective, I'm trying to, I would say that when it all wraps up and you have some of those ups and downs, you just don't give up, and you continue to try to look at yourself and get better in these areas. And when you do, you get that one moment in time where there's an opportunity when you play with the Reckies of the world and the Andrew Ladds and the Stalls and the Brenda Moores and the Doug Waits and the Ray Whitneys, and all of those stars align at the beginning of the year, and everything comes together as the year progresses. And there you are at this one moment in time where you have a chance to win. And then you win the Stanley Cup. And that last goal that went in when we iced the game, out there on the last shift of the game, and we iced it. And I remember coming back to the bench and I'm seeing Glenn Wesley, a guy who had played 20 years in the league, and tears are flowing down his face. And he looks at me, he says, "Hedy, we did it. We did it." And he was crying. And, you realize moments like that, that you go through with great people and great players. Then at this moment in time happens and you make the most of it, and you end up winning. So I guess, what's that feeling like? To answer the question, it's euphoria. It's something that I chase today. I'll be honest with you. I'd love to get back into the game at some point, and continue to try to win it again, win it as a coach, or win it as, somebody that's involved in an organization. I feel once you know what that feeling feels like and what it took to get there, you want to replicate it and you want to repeat. And it's hard to unknow or strip that out of your head, because it's in there, and you know what it feels like and what it looks like and what it smells like, and all those things that come along with it. But a great feeling though, Joseph.
So now following your time in Carolina, you go to Anaheim. That's where you conclude your career. 1,000 games played on November 21st, 2008 versus the team that drafted you, the St. Louis Blues. Now, anything with 1,000, 1,500, whatever it may be, Jumbo Joe Thornton just had, I believe it was his 1,500th point last season.
Mm-hmm.
And regardless of the stat, whatever it may be, you still have 1,000 games played in your career. And again, just by having 1,000 anything in the National Hockey League is absolutely surreal. What is that feeling like when you have that on your stat sheet?
Well, it means you've played hurt, you've played sick, you've played with confidence, you've played with no confidence. It means you played when you had kids and that you probably didn't get any sleep for weeks, and your wife surely didn't get any sleep. It means you probably played with food poisoning. You probably played with, the list goes on. I could continue to tell you you've played through everything. And that's what 1,000 games means. And I guess, what I tell, players and athletes today that I talk to and I try to help and mentor or whatever, is the nights that I didn't feel good, the nights that you took a shot off the foot and you can't even walk, but yet you put your foot in the skate and then you go out there and you try to play, and you do. And not only do you play, I always say I hunted a little bit closer to home. It's like a wounded animal is not going to run, all the way across the desert or all the way across the jungle or wherever he's going to run to. He's going to stick close to home, right? He's going to be smart. And I think, what you learn to do when you play that many games is there's nights that you're going to be banged up, but how do you hunt closer to home? And then how can you turn those nights that you don't feel very good into games that you play really well? And when you start to do that, when you start to play well on the nights that you have no business to be playing well, are the nights that you become a great pro. And I think, again, I think that's what 1,000 games means.
Now, following your time in Anaheim comes retirement, and not really retirement, but just retirement from your playing days. But right after that, you were hired by NBC Sports and Comcast, and you currently work for NBC Sports California. And as we said at the top of the show, you are the color analyst for NBC Sports California and the Sharks. Now, you announced your retirement on Chronicle Live September 6, 2009, a few weeks before the preseason of the 09-10 season. Now, what was the transition like for you from the ice to inside the glass or even in the booth at times?
Well, it's funny. I just wrote a paper for the Sharks for some of they have a club that you can join. I think it's the 1991 club, they call it. And I wrote a paper or just I guess a brief, if you will, about this subject, about retirement and that transition of going from a professional, athlete to then retiring. And I feel, I was listening to a Navy SEAL speak, and he mentioned the most dangerous place in the world is a mile from base. Okay. Yeah. And what happens is you can see the base, it's a mile ahead, there it is, and you let your guard down. And because you start to think, oh, we've made it. And right there, you're not as alert. And now this is all life and death situations, and I don't want to, compare it to that. Yeah. But when you're starting to look at base, when you're getting close to your retirement, that's when it's dangerous, right? And I felt like I was ready to retire. I'd played, like you mentioned, 1,000 games, and I was plenty. I'd given it everything I had with every day. I could just sense my brain, didn't have that fight me for 7 days a week. I might have had it for 4, but the other 3, you got to have that razor sharp edge to you every day when you hit the ice. And I think when you played, 17 seasons, I kind of was starting to wind it down. But that being said, even when I was ready to step away, you're never ready as an athlete. And I think the transition going from retirement, of going down to the rink, being around the players, having that camaraderie, having a focus about you, a physical, presence about you when you step on the ice, and what you demand out of your body, all of those things are things that make you who you are. But I feel what you really need to do is you need to take those characteristics that you've learned through being as a player, and then you need to cross over that bridge of knowing that it's okay to retire. I think it takes time for every athlete. I think every athlete has to, learn how to transition. And I was just fortunate enough to get the opportunity, as you referenced, with the Comcast and with the Sharks. They gave me this chance to be a broadcaster, not even knowing if this would be something I'd enjoy. But I took it and I said, yeah, I'll try it. And boy, am I really glad I did. I think it's been a really fun transition. It's kept me around the game. I've been able to, feel the intensity on game days, and watching the game. I'm still that intense player that I was when I played, except for now I'm in the booth, right? And you're trying to calm some of that down. It's hard. I'll tell you, my broadcast partners usually look at me during the game if I'm slamming my fist or whatever I'm doing, because you're into the game. But I really enjoyed that transition, and I'm really fortunate to be a part of the broadcasting crew for the Sharks.
So for those that do not know, part of the NBC Sports team, Randy Hahn, Dan Rusanowski on KFox 98.5 out in San Jose. He is the radio voice of the San Jose Sharks. Now I'm going to ask you this, Bret, and it is off script, but when you are inside the glass for NBCSN, excuse me, and obviously you're not on NBC Sports California, so you have to be a little bit unbiased. How hard is that to be unbiased when when the Sharks are going on, and if it's a home game, if it's an away game, wherever it is, how difficult is it for you as an athlete to be unbiased?
Well, for me, I feel like I don't have as much a tough time as maybe Randy Hahn or Dan Rusanowski or Baker. Obviously, Dan would just be doing the radio, so he wouldn't be doing the TV side of it. But, but Randy is such a professional. And first of all 3 of those guys I am the luckiest guy in the world to be able to walk into this business, and not even walk. I mean, for giving the opportunity has been amazing. But to be able to work with guys like Randy Hahn, Jamie Baker and Dan Ruzanowski have been a dream. I mean, these guys, and Kendall Coyne this last year was thrown in there with us as well. It was fun to really get a woman's perspective, and she's such a great athlete as well. But for me, not playing for the Sharks, I can kind of separate myself a little bit and be just the guy in the middle trying to call it for both sides. I still, because you're around those players and the coaches all the time, you're going to probably pull for them when you see things, and you might not even notice that you're kind of swaying that way. But, during those games, you try to put that middle hat on and be able to be the best pro you can be while you're broadcasting the game.
That's pretty good. So we do have a few more minutes left, about 3 minutes left. So I do want to ask just a couple more general questions. Now, for those that do not know, 1992, you met your current wife, Christy Yamaguchi, and you were on Celebrity Family Feud. Surprisingly, I believe 4 years ago this summer,
Man,
which is
that's
crazy. I couldn't
crazy.
believe it. I know, because I remember when I saw that you guys were on there, I was like, oh my gosh, that's Bret Hedican. I can't believe it. And in all seriousness, you guys played for your favorite charity, the Always Dream Foundation, and you were with Steve Harvey on national television. What was that experience like for you and the whole Yamaguchi family?
It was great. It's funny, we were watching the Family Feud the other night, and every time you see Steve Harvey come out, you laugh because he's just such a pro, right? I mean, when they're filming those Family Feud shows, he does, I think, 4 or 5 shows in a day.
Yeah.
So they'll bring, couple families out, and if they're winning, they're staying there, and obviously the next family comes out, but then he has to kind of walk back out and do the whole show again, like he just did it for the first time. But every time you see him do it, he just has this swagger to him. I mean, he just makes the show fun, and he makes it as one of the contestants, if you will, one of the families. As for us, we had a great time, and obviously winning it for Christie's Always Dream Foundation was amazing. We're doing incredible things with early childhood literacy here in California, Hawaii, and Arizona. Hope to continue to expand in other states, but we're trying to do a nice job here with kids and helping them learn and have the love of reading here for her foundation.
That's really excellent to hear, and really glad that you guys had a fun time. And as we did say, 4 years ago already, really time does fly when we have fun. My goodness. Now, during quarantine, for some aspiring athletes, aspiring broadcasters, whoever it may be, now as we were talking about the shelter in place, it takes a mental toll on people, physical toll, whatever it may be. What is your advice to some of the aspiring athletes, let's say, for instance, a hockey player that says, well, I can't do it because, well, it's raining outside, it's doing whatever, and I don't feel like, I am told not to go outside. How can they be better, and how can they stay focused?
Well, if you're a runner and you're a marathon runner and you finish the race, the marathon, but you decided to keep on running. And as you kept running, there was no more fans. They all had left because you had already crossed the finish line. And now who are you running for? Well, you're running for yourself, and you're running for nobody else to be around to watch, and you're running to get better. And I guess when you think of that sort of thought is, are you training when everybody's watching, or are you training when nobody knows you're training? And those are the moments that make you better. The ones that when you get up in the morning and you have some routine to you, you commit to getting a good night's rest, even if it's quarantine time, and you get up and you have a good breakfast and you get your training in and you get a regimen going every day. And nobody needs to know. Nobody needs to watch. The only person that you're quitting on or cheating on is yourself. And I feel, to be a champion, when you lift the Stanley Cup or when you win a championship, that's the moment you realize that when I said, gosh dang it, I was right. I was right to do the training when nobody was watching. I was right to, move to Minneapolis for a summer where I trained and I got my body back. I spent, 6 days a week training with these guys that put my body back together when I was broken. I thought I was going to retire in 2004, but I didn't quit. and I kept going. And so I think for athletes that, you know, are putting their workouts on social media and all this other stuff, I mean, how much more time could they be doing by not doing that and just focus on what you're trying to do and trying to get better every day? And not saying that, you know, putting your stuff on social media is not a good idea. It's just, hey, if that's what you want to do, go for it. But, you know, ultimately, you know, the guys that I've seen over the years that have been great teammates and great players are the ones that are running when the marathon's over. They're the ones that are going in the morning when everybody else is sleeping, or they're doing the extra rep. And I think, you know, ultimately you have to ask the question to yourself, how good a player do you want to be? And then do you want to be a champion someday? And because if you do, if the answers to those questions are, you know, that you do want to get better every day, and that you do want to be a champion, then act like a champion, then do the things a champion would do. And those are running when the marathon's over.
Yeah, strive for greatness really is the motto that, you know, a lot of people now, especially during this pandemic, have a little bit of an issue with. But final question, we are running out of time. We have been keeping a tally throughout the entire all 14 episodes, and also through a couple of projects, other projects that I've been working on with St. Francis College in Brooklyn. Because summer's right around the corner and there's not really a lot to look forward to because, you know, slowly things are reopening. What's your favorite ice cream flavor?
Oh, Americone from Ben and Jerry's.
Okay, all right, excellent. That's the first one we've got there. Okay, so the last one we had was coffee, and now that one. Excellent. So, ladies and gentlemen, we have run out of time, but I do want to say, Bret Hedican, I cannot thank you enough for joining me here on the Primetime Rundown Zoom interview series right here on the Eastern Observer. I wish you nothing but the best with the Sharks moving forward, and stay healthy and stay safe.
Joseph, thanks so much for having me on, and good luck to you in your career. Sounds like you've been doing this 5 years, and I think you're going to have a great profession at this. So keep up the good work.
Thank you so much. I really do appreciate that. Closing credits, one quick thing. Episode number 15 is going to be coming to you live on May 26th, which is the day after Memorial Day. That will feature College Hoops Digest contributor Jake Zimmer at 8 p.m. Eastern Time, episode number 15, right here on the Eastern Observer. Ladies and gentlemen, for Bret Hedican, I'm Joey Jarzynka. For all of us at the Eastern Observer and the Blackjack Media Networks, we'll see you next time.